Good afternoon, everyone. If you'll please find your seats, we'd like to start. Sorry? Yeah. They'll be trickling in for the next half hour. They really will. That's the way it works in Montauk.
So, Peter, I put your first three here.
Right. Okay.
Danielle and I are over there. It's just three, I think, pretty straightforward ones. Please make sure you can read my handwriting.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we'll give her 1 minute.
The people are trickling in. Can we sit down? Okay.
No, let's do that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay. Please, everyone, try to sit down. I'd like to welcome you to the 46th Annual CCOM Meet the Candidates. We have a slightly different format this year. As you notice, first of all, we're in the gymnasium rather than the firehouse. Also, all questions will be presented via a card rather than vocally. There'll be, if you folks haven't yet, if you would like to write or, thank you, write or have a question to put on a card, please do so. Our two candidates, unfortunately, Ms. Throne-Holtz is not here yet. She had a little problem on the way in. She'll be here shortly, I'm told. We're starting with the two candidates for the congressional seat for the 1st District, Mr. Lee Zeldin, who is the current sitting congressman, and Ms. Throne-Holtz, who is the Democratic candidate opposing him. That will be the first hour. The second hour will be taken up with the candidates for the New York State Assembly and State Senate. We're keeping the two slightly separate. Each, Mr. Zeldin and Ms. Throne-Holtz, will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and to give you a little idea of who they are and what they're about. And in order to do that, I was going to say we're going to have a coin toss, but if only Mr. Zeldin is here, I guess it's his choice if he wants to go first or second.
I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, should I get started?
Sure.
Okay. Well, it's great to be with all of you here. Thanks for coming out on your Sunday. There are a lot of really important local issues for us to discuss that I know that this group is incredibly passionate about, and some important issues impacting our state and country. My name is Lee Zeldin. I was born and raised on Long Island. Now my wife, Diane, and I are raising our beautiful twin daughters here, Michaela and Ariana. I was on active duty in the Army for 4 years. I spent the last 9 in the Army Reserves, where I currently serve with the rank of Major. In the Army, I served in different capacities as a military magistrate, military intelligence officer, prosecutor, and a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division as well. It's been an honor to serve in the military. I then went on and started serving in the New York State Senate, where I was there for 4 years. During my time in the New York State Senate, I successfully led the effort to permanently, thank you. While in the New York State Senate, I successfully led the effort to repeal the MTA payroll tax for 80% of employers, co-sponsored the nation's strongest property tax cap. We reduced middle-income tax rates to the lowest level in 60 years, and we eliminated the saltwater fishing license fee. We created the PFC Joseph Dwyer program for our veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury, and also wrote the law to protect our military families from protests and military burials. I was elected to Congress in 2014. I've been focusing on my new era of American strength agenda to protect America's security at home and abroad. to help grow our economy and create more good-paying private sector jobs, to fight for our veterans and our first responders, improve the quality of education in our schools, repair our nation's infrastructure, improve healthcare in America, and safeguard our environment. I've been in office for 21 months now in Congress. I've been able to get 3 of my bills to help veterans passed, 2 proposals to save Plum Island. My counterterrorism bill passed as well. My Common Core opt-out bill was signed into law, as well as my Safe Bridges Act to invest money into our state and local bridges. We created a new East End Veterans Healthcare Clinic in Manorville to cut down on the travel time all the way to Northport, which I can't even imagine how much of a full-day commitment it must be from where we're having this debate right now. I also helped lead the effort to permanently reauthorize the Zadroga Act for our 9/11 first responders. I care very deeply and passionately, as all of you do, about our country, about the future of our country. I look forward to a discussion on the issues that matter most to all of you, but I just want to let you know it really has been a privilege to represent what is a beautiful congressional district, a district almost completely surrounded by water that we're all fortunate to call home. And thank you all again for being here.
Thank you very much. Ms. Throne-Holtz is not here, so we'll begin with the first question. This question is actually asked of both candidates, so again, we'll let Mr. Zeldin choose if he'd like to be the first one to answer. Water quality is widely recognized as the greatest environmental threat to Suffolk County. How would you lead our community in addressing water quality, and how would you pay for it?
It's so important to address not just of the waters that are around us, but the water underneath us. I introduced, so as I mentioned, Long Island Sound, our district is almost completely surrounded by water. The Long Island Sound, I'll start there. I introduced the Long Island Sound Restoration and Stewardship Act with Congressman Steve Israel to invest $65 million annually into water quality of the Long Island Sound. We secured $26.5 million for the National Estuary Program. We have 2 estuaries in the 1st Congressional District, the Long Island Sound and Peconic. We reversed a proposed 22% cut in water funding, quality funding for Long Island Sound. We renewed the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which had expired, and we extended that as well, which is really important. As we look at some of our Army Corps projects and protecting our coastline right now, a really big effort is ensuring that the final draft of the final general reevaluation report, which is currently in its draft form, that the final report is one that is doing absolutely the best, the most. It's efficient and productive in protecting our coastline. We can do more as it relates to working with local officials. When the town of Riverhead contacted us about a huge fish die-off, we worked with the New York State DEC and the federal government in order to provide more flexibility in being able to catch these fish that would have died. That's a huge water quality issue within the Peconic Estuary. Also, we permanently extended the conservation easement tax credit, top priority Peconic Land Trust. This allows someone who owns a farm to be able to put an easement on their own property. That would reduce their tax assessment and make it easier for the property to pass from one generation to the next. Harmful algae blooms, nitrogen loading, stormwater runoff. There's a lot that we need to tackle with all levels of government.
Thank you. The second question, is climate change real? Is it caused by human activity?
Yeah, the climate has been changing. It is real, and we all can do a better job being better stewards of we talked about water, our land, and our air. And one of the things I've been very outspoken with is, here on Long Island, we have to upgrade the manner in which we are delivering energy to our homes. When I was a New York State legislator, I supported NYSERDA programs to allow us to be able to upgrade appliances and infrastructure in a house to make our homes more energy efficient. Pursuing more alternative energy research is very important as well. I have worked on securing funding as part of the ARPA-E program, Money for Brookhaven National Lab and Stony Brook University. This type of funding allows us to be able to pursue alternative energy. Wind, solar, solar, water, there are so many different new and efficient ways to be able to not just cut down costs, but also reduce our reliance on fossil fuels.
Okay, welcome. And I'd like to have you have the opportunity to answer the same question.
Would you mind repeating the question?
I think I can. It's live. Yeah, I think I can answer. I can repeat that. Is climate change real? I'm sorry? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, of course. Would you introduce yourself?
I will introduce myself, and I'll start by apologizing for being late. I just came from the First Baptist Church in Riverhead and celebrated with them this morning, so I apologize for being here a little bit late. But I am Anna Throne-Holtz. I think most of you know me as the former supervisor of the town of Southampton, where I served on the town board for the past 8 years, and led the way in the financial cleanup of a very messy financial situation, but also made the environment and the future from a sustainability perspective of this region my priority. We put together what is now a model sustainability plan as an update to our comp plan in the town of Southampton. It is known as Southampton 400 Plus, in looking towards our 400th anniversary. And it deals with every aspect of sustainability and planning for the future as relates to environmental protection and sound sustainable practices. We re-nourished 6 miles of beachfront and dredged 2 million cubic yards of sand and protected 6 miles of coastal frontage that was threatened. We led the way on something called Solarize Southampton, which is a refit program through NYSERDA that allows our residents and our commercial building owners as well to tap into solarizing infrastructure at reduced rates, and Southampton now leads the way in solarized structures on Long Island as far as towns go. We joined and led the way with our colleagues here in East Hampton and the town board in banning single-use plastic bags, and something that now the county is looking at emulating. And I don't think it's lost on anyone now that it's well into its 2nd year that the pesky plastic bags are no longer flying around in the environment as we used to see them. But that doesn't begin to account for the large mass of plastic bags that were part of our waste stream here that are no longer there. And the Clean Water Center, the Clean Water Technology Center at Stony Brook University, which is the national leader in creating retrofit technology to deal with the nitrogen loading coming from our cesspools and septic systems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the yeah.
Thank you.
Your first question is climate change real, and is it caused by human activity?
According to every scientist worth his or her salt, it is absolutely real. It is indisputably real, and it is also the biggest threat to this and coming generations. It is a threat both in terms of quality of life, it is a threat to our economy, it is a threat to our national security. And it is, again, the biggest global challenge on so many levels to face our future, and one that needs to be taken absolutely seriously. We look at it from our very local level and the planning, mitigation, and dollars that we have had to put in place as we are dealing with the effects of climate change, sea level rise, storms that were supposed to come our way no more than every several decades that are now more than a yearly occurrence. We just look at the flooding that is going down south today, the number of lives, businesses, and homes that have been lost that are absolutely attributable to climate change. It is absolutely real, and it is every level of government's responsibility to plan and mitigate for it.
Thank you. The next question for both of you is the Army Corps of Engineers recently completed a controversial project on the public beach in downtown Montauk. How should Montauk respond to the rising sea level and erosion in the years to come? Mr. Zeldin?
As we saw with the recent hurricane that came through exposing many of the geotextile bags, our effort working with the town and the Army Corps of Engineers was to ensure that the town not bear any costs whatsoever. A majority of those bags have since been covered back up, but there's more work to be done, and 100% of that cost before the project gets turned over to the town is going to be owned by the feds, and that's important. The project that was completed is an $8.4 million project, I believe very strongly in local control. And I made it very clear to the local town government that whatever I could do to possibly support you in this effort, what you want to do is what I want to do. And what East Hampton Town has made very clear with the draft general reevaluation report that is out, we agree that the amount of sand that is delivered both in the initial construction as well as the 4-year replenishment needs to be increased. Fortunately, working with both the town and the Army Corps of Engineers, it looks like with all indications that the amount of sand is going to be increasing in the final final general reevaluation report that will get approved. So as far as long-term sustainability, one thing that we've seen with Sandy money for other parts of New York and New Jersey is that you have some local communities choosing to pursue a buyout option where the local community is in favor of that. That is something that there are funds right now that currently exist. And also other communities are taking advantage of being able to raise properties, both business and residences as well. So I've supported that in other areas. What's most important in other geographical areas, what's most important, if the local community wants it, to get together and ask for it, and I'll do whatever I can to possibly help you.
Thank you.
Local control is absolutely paramount, but local control doesn't mean anything if you don't have representatives on the higher levels of government, in this case the federal government, to make sure that those that are in fact charged with not only designing but carrying out the project, in this case the Army Corps, is doing what local control believes should be done. This is an absolute truth with the Montauk project here. Local control and local expertise knew full well that putting the hardening structures in is something that every coastal engineer today will tell you is not the way to do it. That this is a project that will start to encroach on itself as a result of the negative effects of the hardening structures. We don't permit them in the town of Southampton anymore because we have learned that they do not work. And this is a project that local government here did not want to see done by hardening structures, had been promised was going to be considered for a much larger, longer, wider in scope project. Again, that's something that for those of us who have studied this and worked on this for years know. If you don't do a complete project, it starts to encroach on itself. And the teeth and the length of the project in terms of longevity and effectiveness goes down. Our federal representative was responsible for making sure that the Army Corps did a project which was what local control was asking for, and in my opinion, fell down on the job. Had I represented East Hampton at that time, I would have planted myself outside the door of the Army Corps and not let them do anything until they were doing the right thing, and not let them off the hook. There's science behind this. We know about it. The East Hampton Town Board knew about it, and we implored the Army Corps to do the right thing, and Mr. Zeldin fell down on the job.
Sure.
I mean, that's a pretty remarkable spin on it. But what happens is that there's a draft general reevaluation report that was released, and then there was a public comment period. Public comment period that was done locally. A lot of meetings and a lot of discussions that are taking place with the Army Corps as well as the town. So when the town says that and requests for additional sand, what we have done is emphatically insisted with the Army Corps that additional sand be added to the project. So what's next is a final general reevaluation report. And we are being told by the Army Corps of Engineers that the final general reevaluation report is going to include an increase in sand, both of the initial construction as well as the 4-year replenishment. So in the middle of the process, we haven't even finished the public comment period. It finishes this week. But the final general reevaluation report that's coming out, by the way, I serve on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. We have jurisdiction over the Army Corps of Engineers, and I've secured a commitment to increase the amount of sand that's coming to East Hampton Town. So it might be a spin that helps win an election, but it's just not true.
May I rebut as well?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate
But
that.
that's the last rebuttal
Okay.
on
That's
this
fine.
question.
That's absolutely fine. The fact of the matter is that the town of East Hampton was very clear very early on that it did not want hardening structures as part of this project. And it was allowed to go forward with the hardening structures. It also asked for a project that spanned a much longer and wider part of the beach. Again, for those of us who understand these projects, know that if you don't do the full span of the beach, it starts to encroach from one to the other side, in this case from east to west. That is what the town had asked for, and that is what should have been part of the original project. A reevaluation report speaks to just that. It had to be reevaluated because it's not doing the job that everyone in East Hampton knew was needed here. And the dollars that we're still waiting for to complete the FIMP project have not been allocated. They have not been appropriated. And this is a project that we have been waiting for on a local level for years.
Okay. I think I need some additional questions unless you want me to dance.
So we broke them into categories for you.
Okay.
And picked the representative questions. So there you go. Those are the categories.
Okay. Thank you. This is a question for both of you. What will you do about immigration reform? Why don't we
You want me to start?
start with
I'm
you?
happy to start. I think comprehensive immigration reform has to be at the top of the agenda of the next administration. The fact that it is mired in the political dysfunction that is our Congress today is inexcusable. When we talk about what is needed here, and we look at the fact that we have somewhere between 10 to 15 million undocumented workers in the United States of America today, we are forcing businesses to break the law in order to hire people to get the job done, and where businesses are suffering if they cannot access this labor. And to think that we are not dealing with the fact that school budgets, municipal budgets, government on all levels, i.e. taxpayers, are paying the price for the fact that our current Congress is in complete dysfunction over this and will not come together. I'm not going to tell you anything I don't think this crowd knows. The Gang of Eight, as you know, was a bipartisan group that got together and put forward a plan that dealt with path to citizenship, with thorough investigation and background checks, having to pay taxes and back taxes, making sure that there were no criminal records, people had jobs. We have the DREAM Act today that would be a path to citizen for children who came here when they were too young to have any control over that themselves. And my opponent dances around that, well, there have been different administrations, this and that he feels sorry for people who would like to come here that are not here yet. Well, you know, that is dancing around a subject that is at the forefront of both the quality of life and economic viability of work and business and human beings in this country today.
Well, first off, with my opponent's last rebuttal, she said that the FIM project is not funded. That's not true. It's completely funded. As far as immigration goes, you have, and unfortunately, because of partisanship, there hasn't been progress done. And something else that I've noticed during my 21 months in Congress is that there are a lot of solutions to the immigration fight that Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives completely agree on. And what's happening is we're holding hostage the 670 different ways that everyone agrees on how to tackle immigration challenges in this country because of the most controversial components of it. We have had, over the course of the last decade, a Republican president and a Democratic president. We've had a Republican Congress, a Democratic Congress, and a mix in every combination in the last decade. So I'm not going to come here right now and say it's Republicans or Democrats' fault. There are important philosophical differences on some of the challenges and what are some of the solutions. But there is bipartisan agreement on border security. There is bipartisan agreement on interior enforcement proposals. And we should pass those. Mike McCall, the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, has a border security bill. I support it if there's a way to make it stronger, better. I don't care if you are the most Republican or the most Democrat, most liberal conservative. It doesn't matter. If you have a good idea, let's make it better. Bob Goodlatte's the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. He has a proposal for interior enforcement. I would be welcome to hear anyone's idea on how to make it better. But I believe that you could get both of those passed. And then you have a whole lot of other people who are here illegally right now where there are bipartisan solutions on the table for people who come to this country. We educate them. They want to stay. There are American companies that want to hire them. Let's make that happen. High-tech visas, our seasonal workforce, agriculture, tourism, and hospitality. There are many different areas where we could get bipartisan agreement on the visa program as well.
May I rebut?
Pardon me?
May I rebut?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's an important question because the fact of the matter is that Mr. Zeldin is part of the majority. Anyone in his party, including him, can bring something forward and have a very good chance of getting it passed. So if the spirit is there to actually get this done, why isn't it getting done? And when we're talking about border security and we're talking about some of these bills that he's talking about, we are not talking about solutions to the 10 to 15 million undocumented workers that are in our country today. And he supports Mr. Trump's building of wall. Of course, he hasn't done the math on it. Some of us have, and there isn't enough dollar bills for the Treasury to print to be able to afford this crazy idea. We need real solutions, and we can't dance around the fact that it coulda, shoulda, woulda get done. You're in the majority. You could have gotten it done in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so one of the issues it's not really in the House, it's in the Senate. So in the Senate, you need 60 votes in order to pass something. You know what that means? That forces bipartisanship. Because there's 54 Republicans right now in the Senate, and come January, there's not going to be 60 in a majority, no matter who's in the majority in the Senate. So what we see right now, there are hundreds of different types of bills, all different kinds of different bills, that are sitting in the Senate and they can't pass. And 2 years ago, when there was a Democratic majority in the Senate, there were hundreds of bills passed by the House sitting in the Senate that couldn't pass. I have been a strong proponent in the Senate using reconciliation more. Right now, the current rules of the Senate, they've been around for decades, is that a bill, in order to invoke cloture, to end debate and bring a bill up for a vote, you need 60 votes. But when you use reconciliation, you only need 51. And it makes it a lot easier to be able to pass bills. So if we want to talk about our Congress working better for us, it doesn't matter whether come January, regardless of who's in power, how many votes they have, the current rules, you have to get to 60. I believe that we should be passing important legislation on immigration as we just discussed. And we have the votes in the House, and we need the votes in the Senate.
All right. The next question, this is for you, Mr. Zeldin. What would you do to improve gun safety? Please include the following in your response. 1, expanding, improving background checks. 2, no-fly, no-buy. 3, limiting access to assault rifle weapons. And 4, smart guns.
Well, I introduced a legislation called the Protect America Act because I don't believe, by the way, I don't know of a single member of Congress in favor of terrorists being able to purchase firearms. Not one. There's 535 members of Congress. No one's in favor of that. What we have to do is we have to pass the right legislation that both prevents terrorists from being able to purchase firearms and protects the due process rights of Americans. We have to do everything in our power